Shalom YouTube, shalom believers and followers and YouTubers. It is Sister Kate at Shofar Mountain. This morning, Pastor and I were talking about the Turkish shooter in the Netherlands. And one of you all alerted me to that situation yesterday in your comments, and I went and looked at the story about it this morning. And the Turkish authorities, who have been alerted, said that this man may have been aiming at a relative and that he may have accidentally had friendly fire, whatever you want to call it, while he fired at her while she's riding on the tram in the Netherlands. So we don't have confirmation of this. This is just my own opinion based on what I know about the different cultures, and having lived in a Muslim country for a while. There is the honor killing as part of some Islamic belief, where if your sister, daughter, mother, female relative has dishonored herself, then her male relatives are under the burden of killing her or disciplining her, depending on what her dishonor was. That dictates what the punishment is, and death is sometimes included in that if she has dishonored herself, like dating a non-believer or sleeping with a non-believer or marrying a non-believer or renouncing the faith. And so my suspicion is that Turkish man was doing that in regards to his female relative. Now, it may also be that that relative was his wife and she's fled from him or something. I don't know. We don't know yet because the authorities haven't reported on that yet. But someone else had said in the comments that in the Netherlands you're not allowed to own a firearm, so how is this Turkish man even able to have one? So I went to Wikipedia's website, under the Google search engine of firearms laws for, different nations, and come to find out that the Netherlands, you are allowed to own a firearm in the Netherlands, but it's restrictive, that you have to have a permit, and the permits are issued to, I think it said, target shooters and hunters and law enforcement. And if you are going to get a firearm under being a target shooter, you have to be a member of a target shooting club for a year before you can apply for the license or the permit. So, excuse me. So it's not the case in the Netherlands that no one can have a firearm, but if this guy's a Turkish citizen, how does that apply in there? I don't know. But when reading through the article on Wikipedia about permission or countries that have firearms laws and what they are, there was a definite bias towards firearms ownership. And it, excuse me, it equated individual rights of citizens. Okay, I'm going to have to move. Hang on a minute. Pastor's decided right now that he's going to do some weed whacking. Hopefully that's a little bit better. So there was a definite correlation in the article between permissive gun laws. Hey, I'm trying to shoot a video here. Do you mind? Oh my gosh. If it's not the birds or the phone, it's the dogs or the weed whacking. Between permissive gun laws and crime, and it may not have been overtly stated, but it was certainly implied. And that brought me to think this way. You have to have a strong civil rights government in order to have firearms laws allowing your citizens to own firearms. Because the United States government, Second Amendment, does exactly that, and the United States government was written in definite reaction to the monarchy under which the British citizens that started the United States decided to rebel. So these British citizens are in a British colony in the Americas in the early, 1700s, late 1700s. And the monarchy was not giving them the rights they knew they were afforded under the government that was going on in England at the time, King George and so on, and Parliament and whatever. And so these British citizens, knowing they were being denied their rights, then rebelled and had a revolution and wrote the Constitution for their new nation. And included in it were amendments, and the Second Amendment guaranteed the right to firearms, because without the right to own firearms, these colonists would not have been able to fight the British military. And in America at the time, unless you already owned, cows or chickens which were not native and had to be imported, the way you were going to put meat on your table was to hunt, to, eat bison and elk and deer and game birds and so on. So it started with sort of a survival basis, but then it turned into a individual rights government, and the government that they established, the Democratic Republic, because people just want to call America a democracy, and we are not a straight up democracy. We are a democratic republic, and a republic is a group of states that join together and agree to be a nation. So that the states have to have their, also not individual right, but the states have to have their states' rights within the republic. A democracy would be just a simple majority, 51% over 49%, and that would govern all decision making. But the United States is not formed that way. The United States has checks and balances also written into our government, so that no one branch of the government can be more powerful than another. And that all was in a reaction to a monarchy, where the king has the ultimate rights, and then Parliament has to bicker and fight amongst themselves to divide those rights up. So that gets back to my point. A government with strong civil rights allows its citizens to have, and I'm phrasing that incorrectly. A government with strong civil rights recognizes the right of a citizen to have a firearm for their own self-protection. That, as our Constitution states, our right to things like life, liberty, All right, so the main point I was trying to make before everything that I live with came to interrupt my video was it takes a government with a strong civil rights structure to guarantee you your individual right to protect yourself. And the reason it becomes more important in a place like America versus, say, England is that we are so much bigger than England. If you had a police force of a proportionate size in a country like England, you may be able to have enough first responders to protect people. But in America, at least, it's 20 minutes before a police person will show up. And in some places like the rural counties, and there are hundreds of thousands of them, if not millions of them in America, you may have 4 deputies in an area the size of Rhode Island. That's not enough police to be at your house to save your life or to stop a crime from happening. And so the citizens in a country as big as ours need the right to protect themselves, because they can be preyed upon without anybody knowing. And if a person's argument to someone like myself, a citizen of the United States, is you should not have any crime at all, well, that just doesn't make any sense. Because there are at least tens of thousands, if not more, cases of missing people in our country. Being in a country this big, there are crimes that can go on that may not be discovered for days, months, even years, decades, sometimes decades later, someone will be walking in a chance situation and come upon a human skeleton, and research will show that 80 years ago this person went missing. There were two girls driving home from some sort of party in the winter time, and I think the state was Pennsylvania, who disappeared that night. And it wasn't until decades later that a pond in the area, because of a drought, the water level dropped, and they found that the girls had lost control of the vehicle, driven into that pond, drowned, and the bodies had stayed there for that many decades. I think it was 50 years, may have been more, may have been less. But my point is, it's a strong government on individual rights that grants the right to its citizens to protect themselves. And it is a repressive government. It is a fascist government. It is a communist government that takes away a citizen's right to protect themselves, and then, what do you want to call it, runs roughshod over its citizenry. And a couple of the examples that were given in the Wikipedia articles were Nazism, and what was the other one? Communism. And if you look at some of the largest slaughter of human citizens in the world, Stalin in Russia killed 50 million of his own people. Okay? He was a repressive communist leader, and when under a repressive government, you are not allowed to own a firearm to defend yourself, then the state police can show up at your house any time of the night and day and take any member of your family, including yourself, off to some secret prison or whatever and kill you, and there is no repercussions. There is no right to an attorney, right to a jury trial, right to a quick and speedy trial. All these things come from a very strong individual rights government, and that is what the United States Democratic Republic is. And I'm not saying there aren't others in the world. I have not done an in-depth study on how many countries have that kind of a government. I just know I live in that country, and I know that kind of government. And it is very strong on individual rights, and it's what citizens of America have as a responsibility to keep watch over their own rights and to push for them when they're being trampled on. So the whole conclusion to the video is the perception is a permissive government allows its people gun rights, when in fact that's the opposite of the truth. The truth is it takes a strong government granting civil rights, and I keep saying granting. Our forefathers recognized that certain rights came from God, that you have the right to be alive under God, and that you also have a right to be safe in your person, to not be physically abused or repressed or arrested or taken advantage of. And God gives you that right. And your government should recognize that right and back that right up. And so that is the conclusion of my video right there. And I hope this has at least stimulated some thought on your end of the thing, and that you will go research some of these things and understand the importance for you to stand up for your God-given rights. All right, bless you. Shalom.